The 2018 regular season has come to an end, so it is time for the end of season recap and then moving on to going over who we are going to be facing in the National League Division Series. But first things first, our Atlanta Braves finished the year at 92-70 on the year, as the Washington Nationals were right behind us, 2 games back, but the Braves do get first place, so therefore they do not have to deal with that wild card game. And the NL Central, the only team going from the NL Central is the Chicago Cubs. They were 97-65. The NL West is the Dodgers blew the Giants out of the water. 109-53 was their record. And the Giants went 92-70, same as us, yet they were 17 games back from the Dodgers. Just the ridiculous NL West. In the AL, there's the East, where the Red Sox were 90-72, and the Yankees were 88-74. The AL Central is the Indians and the Tigers. Indians at 96-66, Tigers at 83-79, and then the West is the Angels at 92-70. Taking a look at who did well on the Braves throughout the league and the league leaders, as Freddie Freeman, obviously, his .303 average is 12th in the National League. 182 hits is tied for 6th. His 56 home runs is first, obviously. 150 RBI is second. Justin Turner beat him out for that. 98 runs is 5th. 90 walks is second behind Matt Carpenter of the Cardinals. His .627 slugging percentage is first. 1.019 OPS is first. And then his 7.6 WAR is second behind Starling Marte, who's a center fielder. So he has more opportunities to get that higher WAR up as a center fielder. Then, of course, there's Marwin Gonzalez, whose average had him at 4th in the National League, and his 40 doubles on the year was 7th in the National League. He was a doubles machine for this Braves ball club. And then Ender Inciarte kind of fell off in the month of September in a lot of the other categories, but he still finished the season with 35 stolen bases. He still had a great season by all means, but he just did not have the spectacular season he was having earlier on in the year. But 35 stolen bags, that was 6th in the National League. On the pitching side of things, there's Nick Vincent with his 45 saves, which is tied for 5th in the National League. Then there's Jeremy Hellickson, who's 2.51 ERA, despite his win-loss, which wasn't impressive. But like I said, pitcher wins don't indicate how good a pitcher is pitching. His .251 ERA was second, and then his .108 WHIP was 7th in the National League. And then Jaime Garcia had 11 home runs allowed, which was actually tied for first for least in the National League. And then a 4.8 WAR was 10th in the National League. As far as who won the awards in each league in the National League, we have the MVP is our very own Freddie Freeman. We already know what he did, 56 home runs, 150 RBI, he's the MVP. The NL Cy Young is Clayton Kershaw from the Los Angeles Dodgers and their ridiculous team. The batting title went to Joey Votto of the Cincinnati Reds. Reliever of the year went to a Dodgers player in Kenley Jansen. Rookie of the year was Kyle Wren from the Brewers. Hank Aaron went to Freeman, and then the Gold Glove at first base was Freddie Freeman. The Gold Glove at shortstop was Dansby Swanson, his first career Gold Glove. Ender Inciarte was the Gold Glover in center field, and then the Silver Slugger at first base was another award for Freddie Freeman. In the American League side of things got interesting as Chris Carter won MVP because this game isn't smart enough to realize that if you hit 236, it's not as good as hitting 300. Doesn't matter if you hit 47 home runs on 103 RBI. You shouldn't win MVP hitting 236. This isn't 1925. And then the AL Cy Young was David Price of the Boston Red Sox. The batting title went to J.D. Martinez of the Detroit Tigers. Reliever of the year went to another Tiger in Francisco Rodriguez, K-Rod. Rookie of the year was James Caprillion, Grandmaster Cap of the New York Yankees. And then the Hank Aaron Award went to Mike Trout of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim of California of somewhere. So the guys on our team who weren't scattered around the league as league leaders, there's Matt Kemp, who had just an awful season, a .234 average, a sub-300 OBP at .298, and then a sub-400 slugging percentage at .385. Guy's just not a good player anymore. He is definitely going to be traded in the offseason, and he's actually going to be benched in the playoffs, as we'll see when I go over the lineups in a bit. Danny Valencia, definitely a disappointing season, .253 average, .321 OBP, 400 slugging, 18 home runs is okay, but it's definitely not what he did last year for the Mariners, which is why I signed him. He definitely I mean, he added some pop to the lineup, but I mean, it wasn't like pop was the reason why we were a good team. It was because we got on base a lot, we got a lot of hits, and Freeman was able to drive in so many players and hit so many home runs. But Valencia, definitely a disappointing season. I would say he is not going to be back next year, and he's probably on the hot seat for his spot in the playoffs. But Jung-Ho Kang has definitely picked things up since being traded from the Pirates. He finished the year with a .261 average, a .335 OBP, a .503 slugging percentage, and 29 home runs, 64 RBI. 1 home run off 30, so the guy had a good season. He got the job done. He added more pop to our lineup. And then there's Wilfredo Tovar, who is our guy who was playing second. When he was playing second when Swanson got hurt and Albies shifted to short, and then Albies got sent down, and then Tovar was second, and then we picked up Gong, so Tovar went to the bench, but now Tovar is back. Hitting .327, .383 OBP, .441 slugging. Great year for him. Jace Peterson was called up when we sent down Albies because he was raking in AAA, and he's had a pretty good year in the major leagues with like just over 100 at-bats. He's hitting .291 with a .365 OBP and .476 slugging. And then there's Gordon Miller, who is now our backup catcher, with Roberto Perez being in AAA with a .313 average, .421 OBP. So like I mentioned, Matt Kemp did lose his job heading into the playoffs, as he is going to be starting the playoffs on the bench, as I don't think he's really earned that playoff spot. So Marwin Gonzalez, the super utility man, is going to shift into right field for the playoffs, and Wilfredo Tovar is going to be our second baseman, as pretty much everything else is going to stay the same. Valencia is on the hot seat, though. If he struggles, I will not hesitate to make some changes. What those changes will probably be Jacob May will probably take over in left field. He's hitting .265 with a .349 OBP and .394 slugging. Slugging's not impressive, he's not a slugger, but he's been a pretty serviceable fourth outfielder this year. So if Valencia struggles, May's speed and contact hitting will be able to take over in left field. As far as our pitching for the playoffs goes, we only have a 4-man rotation, and that 4-man rotation is Julio Teheran as the first guy, and then followed by Jeremy Hellickson, the number 2 ERA man in the National League, followed by Jaime Garcia, the guy who cannot give up home runs, and then Jason Hamill, our guy we acquired at the deadline from the Kansas City Royals. And then in the bullpen, we've got Chris Medlin, Kyle Crockett, our lone lefty, Joe Biagini. Fulte has shifted to the bullpen with his 100-mile-per-hour fastball for this playoffs. Matt Wisler, he's been in the bullpen all year, been a solid guy there. And then there's Arodys Vizcaíno, Tanner Scheppers, and then, of course, Nick the Goatee Vincent as our closer. And the team we will be playing in this NLDS is the Chicago Cubs. So the Cubs, they are going to be rocking a 5-man rotation because MLB The Show's AI is not smart enough to realize that once you get to the playoffs, you can take a guy to rotation if you have a weak rotation, and then just rock with that. But I mean, they do have a pretty strong 1-5, so I mean, that's not why they don't have a 4-man, because the game doesn't give any of the CPU teams 4-man, but a 5-man rotation isn't the worst thing for them in the playoffs, as 1-5 is Jake Arrieta, John Lester, Mike Montgomery, Brett Anderson, and then Sean Lackey. And then they have 4 main pieces in their bullpen, being Carl Edwards Jr., Pedro Strop, is it Strop or Strop? I don't know. Hector Rondon, and then Wade Davis as their closer. And then since this is a Joe Madden managed team, they have a lot of variety to their right-handed and left-handed lineups. As with the righties, or against righties, it is leading off in right field is Jason Hayward, followed by shortstop Addison Russell, first base Anthony Rizzo, third base Chris Bryant, left field Kyle Schwarber, second base Javier Baez, then catching is Wilson Contreras, and then of course it's the pitcher in the 8th spot because Joe Madden, and then the 9th is center fielder John Jay. And then against left-handers, they have leading off as center fielder the lefty John Jay, second baseman Javier Baez, first base Rizzo, third base Bryant, left field Schwarber, that's the same, catching is Contreras, right field Hayward, then of course the pitcher in the 8th spot, and then Russell is rounding things out in the 9 hole. But this team's bats are not what got them to this point of being such a good team this year. I mean, they do have some scary bats pretty much all throughout their lineup, but their pitching is really what carried them this year, as they were first in the least amount of hits allowed, first in the least amount of runs allowed, and then also tied for first in the least amount of home runs allowed. So this Cubs team can really pitch, and don't expect any like 9-1 victories from this Braves team in this NLDS. So with that being said, that's going to wrap things up here for this edition of the Atlanta Braves franchise, going over the end of season, who won the awards, who did well on our team, and then also previewing the NLDS matchup against the Chicago Cubs. So with that being said, the next time you see me will be for Game 1 of the National League Division Series in Chicago at Wrigley Field. I've been your host, Jersey Born, and I'm saying goodbye.
Need a little time to